Some may question these stories, some may doubt them, but there's no argue that what had happened to Anita on February 2, 2006, is one of the most extraordinary and unexplainable medical miracles ever documented. Before we go to the topic, if you are a family, by subscribing to this channel and pressing the call sign, you will receive unique and interesting programs every day. I invite you to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. It began when Mirjani was rushed to the emergency room of Hong Kong Sanatorium Hospital, and was only given a few hours to live due to organ failure from lymphoma cancer that had been eroding her body since her initial diagnosis in 2002. This unbelievable story of her resurrection is brought to you here in her own words, from her book, Dying to Be Me. The day my life changed, February 2, 2006. After 4 heart-wrenching years with cancer, my body had finally had enough and I went into a coma. As my husband rushed me to the hospital, the world around me started to appear surreal and dreamlike, and I could feel myself slip further and further away from consciousness. I felt no emotional attachment to my seemingly lifeless body as it lay there on the hospital bed. It didn't feel as though it were mine. It looked far too small and insignificant to have housed what I was experiencing. I felt free, liberated, and magnificent. Every pain, ache, sadness, and sorrow was gone. I felt completely unencumbered. I couldn't recall feeling this way before, not ever. I continued to sense myself expanding further and further outward, drawing away from my physical surroundings. It was as though I were no longer restricted by the confines of space and time, and continued to spread myself out to occupy a greater expanse of consciousness. I simultaneously experienced a sense of joy mixed with a generous sprinkling of jubilation and happiness. I felt all of my emotional attachments to my loved ones and my surroundings slowly fall away. What I can only describe as superb and glorious unconditional love surrounded me, wrapping me tight as I continued to let go. It didn't feel as though I had physically gone somewhere else, it was more as though I'd awakened. Perhaps finally being roused from a bad dream. My soul was finally realizing its true magnificence. And in doing so, it was expanding beyond my body and this physical world. Spiritual inspiring sunbeams flashing through the heavily clouded skies with hope. The feeling of complete, unconditional love was unlike anything I'd known before. It was totally undiscriminating, as if I didn't have to do anything to deserve it, nor did I need to prove myself to earn it. To my amazement, I became aware of the presence of my father, who died 10 years earlier. "Dad, you're here. I can't believe it." I wasn't speaking those words, I was merely thinking them. In fact, it was more like feeling the emotions behind the words, as there was no other way of communicating in that realm other than through emotions. And then I recognized the essence of my best friend, Sony, who died of cancer 3 years prior. I seemed to know that they'd been present with me, long before I became aware of them, all through my illness. I was also aware of other beings around me. I didn't recognize them, but I knew they loved me very much and were protecting me. I realized that they too were with me all of this time, surrounding me with love even when I wasn't conscious of it. My heightened awareness in that expanded realm was indescribable, despite my best efforts to explain it. The Milky Way full of stars of immortality shining with eternal light. The universe makes sense. I realized. I finally understand, I know why I have cancer. I was too caught up in the wonder of that moment to dwell on the cause, although I'd soon examine it more closely. I also seemed to comprehend why I'd come into this life in the first place. I knew my true purpose. Why do I suddenly understand all this? I wanted to know. Who's giving me this information? Is it God? Krishna? Buddha? Jesus? And then I was overwhelmed by the realization that God isn't a being, but a state of being. And I was now in that state of being. I saw my life intricately woven into everything I'd known so far. My experience was like a single thread woven through the huge and complexly colored images of an infinite tapestry. All the other threads and colors represented my relationships, including every life I'd touched. There were threads representing my mother, my father, my brother, my husband, and every other person who'd ever come into my life, whether they related to me in a positive or negative way. I began to understand that while I may have only been a thread, I was integral to the overall finished picture. Seeing this, I understood that I owed it to myself, to everyone I met, and to life itself to always be an expression of my own unique essence. Trying to be anything or anyone else didn't make me better, it just deprived me of my true self. It kept others from experiencing me for who I am, and it deprived me of interacting authentically with them. A free woman dancing freely in sunrise, living who she really is, doing what she wants. As I looked at the great tapestry that was the accumulation of my life up to that point, I was able to identify exactly what had brought me to where I was today. Just look at my life path. Why, oh why, have I always been so harsh with myself? Why was I always beating myself up? Why was I always forsaking myself? Why did I never stand up for myself and show the world the beauty of my own soul? Why was I always suppressing my own intelligence and creativity to please others? I betrayed myself every time I said yes when I meant no. Why have I violated myself by always needing to seek approval from others just to be myself? Why haven't I followed my own beautiful heart and spoken my truth? Why don't we realize this when we're in our physical bodies? How come I never knew that we're not supposed to be so tough on ourselves? She tells others that death has taught her life. This is how life is, she teaches us to value our lives. Dear my listeners and viewers, I invite you to post your thoughts and opinions in the comments. Goodbye until we meet in another amazing video.